Hello, everyone. My name is Pamela Sorensen, and I'm the founder and president of High Frequency Consulting, where we make connections for your business and organizations that matter. We at High Frequency Consulting are so proud to be the sponsor for this particular panel, a candid conversation about cancer, featuring, and actually he's the moderator, my dear friend Michael Sapienza, who is the CEO of Colorectal Cancer Alliance. The panelists are Dr. John Marshall, a renowned oncologist, and his wife, Liza Marshall. They wrote the book Off Our Chests, and I know this is going to be a very moving and wonderful conversation. So thank you for watching.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to 1455's Summer Festival and our panel, A Candid Tour Through the World of Cancer. So I'd like to introduce our two guests, Liza Marshall and Dr. John Marshall. They are the author of Off Our Chests. So do you guys want to just introduce yourselves? Liza, who are you? John, who are you? And then we'll kind of go from there.
Sure. I'm Liza Marshall. I think I'm the instigator of the book in some regard, as a breast cancer now survivor. I am a retired lawyer, raised two children, supported a medical oncologist husband for many years, and have been very involved in community in general, and particularly with an organization called Hope Connections for Cancer Support, which I was on the founding board of and continue to be involved with.
And I think I actually caused the cancer because I'm a medical oncologist, and as you know, I would go out and gripe about all of the research funding and success that breast cancer researchers were having and getting. And as a GI cancer doctor and researcher, and seeing us fall further and further behind, I had to say something. And so in some ways, I always sort of blame myself that the breast cancer gods were going to get even with me by giving Liza breast cancer. So in the end of the day, we thought we should share that story. But anyway,
because that's the egotistical version.
Yes,
of
it's all about me. That's what it is. It's all about me. So yeah.
So why did you decide to put this story, like kind of like your life story, which is, this basically is, into a book? Why didn't you just do like some interviews, go talk on some panels? Why did you guys decide to to put this into, I guess, a memoir?
You want to start, because I think for John it was therapy.
Yeah. So we were sharing the story with friends around dinner tables who knew us, and me in various medical settings and the like. So we were sort of sharing it person by person, but there was a lot I really wanted to say, and I wanted to share with patients, with other doctors, in some ways with the world, that I've got stuff that might help. Our experience may be worth something to others, and so there was an element of wanting to share that information. But as you say, Liza, there was also a sort of a need to get it out. It was building up. It was adding to my own personal stress and anxiety, and just the process of pausing enough to write the story down was clearly therapy.
Yeah, and I think we actually both like writing. I mean, we haven't had much. Well, John's had an opportunity to do it, but in a very scientific setting, which is not creative. And I I was an English major in college. I'm the daughter of a journalist, and we had a friend who knew our story and suggested that we really should put it down on paper, which or something in a computer, I guess these days. But and it was fun to be able to write again. I mean, to take some time and sit back and really think about not only what we've been through, but how you convey that to other people in a way that's useful and you hope entertaining too, I think.
So sorry, John, were you going to say something? No, I was going to say, I know where you wrote the book, and I know when you wrote the book. Can you talk a little bit about your both of your mindsets, where you were, how you went through the process, et cetera?
Yeah, I mean, you have to remember that you're referring to was 2.0, because we actually did try, about 5 or 6 years before that to do this.
I didn't.
And we met with publishers, and we wrote some, initial draft chapters and thoughts.
Mhm.
And then when the publisher came back and said, this is good, but give me like 20 more chapters, we realized that we weren't in the mindset.
Really an agent, not a publisher.
Agent, I'm sorry.
Not
So I still don't know what I'm doing.
hyperbole.
Yeah, I'm not a publisher yet, but an agent. And we were like, we can't do that. There's no way with the way life was going that we had even the ideas of what would come out in that kind of thing. So what we were lucky enough to do is kind of run away, but run away to an idyllic, academic, not quite monastery, but simple place where our lives went from, typical lives that people are living nowadays to pause. And have
say where that was, or you're leading to where that was.
Yeah, so we were lucky enough to get to go to Oxford, England, and the university, Georgetown University, has sabbaticals, which not very many physicians ever take. So with a lot of work, we applied for a sabbatical and were granted a year. And then they also have, free of charge for the faculty, 2 flats in the Campion Hall, which is a Jesuit college in Oxford. A lovely place filled with lovely people who are sitting around thinking about the problems of the world and trying to solve them, which was just a remarkable environment to be in. And solve them from a human side. That was the other piece of it. It was whether they were economists or whatever they were, also they were trying to solve it from a human side. To be around them and think that way in that kind of environment, I think clearly let that part of our heads loose, if you will. And so it was just magical, it really was.
Yeah, can I ask you, so yes, you wrote the book in Oxford. Did you plan on doing that? Is that why you took the sabbatical? Is that why you kind of both went, or was it something else that you took a sabbatical and then you decided to write the book?
Yeah, depends on who you ask and who I was telling. So, for the university, that had to be number 3 reason.
Right.
Number 1 and 2 reasons were some cancer-related other things, which we did do. We succeeded in doing. So, but the real reason for the sabbatical was, just exhaustion for me. And Liza, our daughter Emma, others realized that, I was tired. And I think we both were, but I really was. And I just needed to step away from the 25 plus years I had been doing what I was doing and reflect on it, quite honestly. And to still stay in that mindset about what that career's been, but to look at it from the outside a little bit. And it was exactly what the doctor ordered.
Yeah. And Liza, for you, obviously as a breast cancer survivor, obviously a former patient, what was the process like for you? Was it therapy? Was it a little bit PTSD, or was it, this is just what I need to do? And like John said, share some of these stories with the world.
Yeah, well, we came back to it, on, as John says, 2.0. So it had been quite a while. I mean, it ended up being, I guess, 13 years after my diagnosis. And I was really afraid I wasn't going to be able to remember enough to create my portion of the book. And so I'm being a lawyer, and I started with research. I, acquired my medical records and read through them. And I found my calendar from that period, which in those days was on paper. And so, I thumbed through and figured out what happened each day and, what days I had chemo, at least as much as I could get from that. And so in the beginning, it was sort of just relating the facts.
And you even had my handwritten notes.
Right. And I still had my folder with, my consent forms for the clinical trial I was on. And, you never know when you're going to need those things again. But, and a lot, so I had a bit of documentation, which really helped. And I was amazed, honestly, at how much just came back as I started writing.
Mm-hmm.
As I say, I started with the facts, but all of a sudden I would have this sort of visceral feeling of, being in that room again and somebody saying something or what it felt like. And, we haven't credited our sort of what we call our book midwife, the person who really suggested we write this, Marianne Segedy-Mazak. And we would send our pieces to her really almost every night, whatever we had written, and she would edit over the weekend and send it back. But she was really great, I think, for both of us at encouraging us to flesh things out, things we had trying to remember things we had said to each other and how we felt, particularly about our relationship, I think, during that period, because it was it was a strange time. And it is a strange time, I think, for any cancer patient. Your relationships do change. All of a sudden, John is taking care of me in a way that he had never had to do before. Well, maybe not since I'd had a baby, but that's much shorter lived. I think it was, as I say, it was sort of I didn't have too much PTSD. I was going to say it was sort of a blessing to have those things come back. I'm not sure it's exactly a blessing, but it wasn't really traumatic. It was therapeutic in a way. And I think, again, hoping that talking about it, and as we are getting reaction to the book, I think we're hearing that people actually are finding it helpful and affirmative and validating to hear these things that a lot of people feel, but I think a lot of people don't want to talk about for, either in the moment or even later on.
So talk about the process. You were in Oxford. John, you talked a little bit about what it meant for you. Liza, what it meant for you. But what was the process like? How many times did you fight? Number one.
Okay, I can answer that.
Yeah.
How much beer did you drink?
Yeah,
that
I saw pictures of.
I can answer that too. I can't remember actually how much beer we drank. So first off, we got up at 7 and not 6. That was great.
That's amazing.
It was great. That was good.
It was good until it got later in the year, and then it didn't get light till 8 a.m., and then that got hard. 7 was really early.
What we don't really appreciate here is just how short their day is in December.
Right.
Right around Christmas, the sun never, it was gloomy, dusk all the time, like noon, it was dusk. Anyway, it was weird. But anyway, when we got up at 7, have our little healthy breakfast in the flat, and then we would split and go different places. And we rarely wrote in the same room. Liza tended to camp in the flat, and I had this idyllic vision that I was going to go off to different colleges every day and work in their libraries. And I realized that was pretty stupid after a while. So,
well, mostly because they kept saying, no, you can't
do it. I said, don't you know who I am? And so then, and they're like, yeah, no. And so then I just stayed in our college's library, which was just, 3 flights down the stairwell. So I would go off to work down the stairwell with my laptop, and Liza would keep her laptop. And you were just commenting the other day that we couldn't believe we wrote these books on little keyboards, and not, little flaky keyboards that, you can barely see.
I was going to say, that's really why John had to go downstairs, because about every 30 minutes I would swear as I lost some paragraph, accidentally hit delete. So.
Yeah, I could still hear.
I was disruptive.
And the Jesuits were embarrassed. This woman I brought along with me. But and then we would usually take a break about 10:30, go somewhere on a short walk for a cup of coffee. And sit together, and sort of, because you guys weren't up yet, even by then, so there was still no new emails. And then after our coffee,
well, I'd say during that period, we frequently did actually talk about what we had written. There was a big reveal later on, but we did, I just remembered this, or what do you remember?
Yeah, we kind of compare notes, but we didn't read each other's at all. And then we would go work for another couple of hours, and then it was lunchtime, and then it was time for a walk. And we would go for a long couple-hour walk, usually pick a different canal and head out, and see some sheep, and find a pub, usually somewhere along the way, and make our way back, have an easy dinner, watch funny British television.
Which is inspirational in itself.
It is. It's so great. We get BritBox because we need flashbacks of that on a regular basis.
Wow.
And then go to bed early. So, and we do that again. But after that, that was really the first few months.
Yeah.
And
September and October.
Then in November was the big reveal, as you say. And we decided it was time to sort of give each other what we had written. And that took a couple of days.
Yeah. And so then that was the only point at which I would say we really had much of an argument about anything. And I think we were both not shaken maybe, but maybe shaken a little bit by what the other one had written. Not all of it, just section, small.
Hurt. There were
small,
things that hurt.
Right.
Things that we didn't know before about what the other was feeling.
Right.
We questioned facts. Guess who lost every one of
No,
those
that's
questions?
not true. That's not true.
And where we questioned them, we left them both in so that people could decide. The reader can decide which one
Right. Choose your own ending.
is the right version of the story. But that was if we had done that reveal 15 years earlier, I'm not sure we would have weathered it as well as that letting the time pass.
Yeah.
Which kind of comes around to me to I've had some patients now read this, some active patients, and some have said that they had to stop because they weren't ready to think about it that way. And others who, obviously the other, but, positively, but that you need to be in the right mindset to say to each other some of the things we said, and honestly, to even let yourself think some of the things that we did think at the time and then shared publicly in the book. So I think different people will be struck differently by what we've written.
Yeah, I obviously read the book, and it was hard for me to read it, even though I knew the outcome for both of you. It still was very, very hard. Maybe not PTSD for me necessarily, but still, very, very challenging. Can you talk a little bit more about this reveal and then an agent and the publisher and all of that process and how you did it and how things are going, all that sort of stuff?
Yeah. Well, so I was just to sort of complete the process part too, because we had these two separate narratives, and John's contained a lot of what I call riffs on various topics. So,
mine was much better.
Right. The affordability of healthcare and what else? Oh, burnout, physician burnout, and things like that. So there were a lot of serious topics in there, but that had to be fit in around what I always called my part of the story was really the spine, because it was chronological from beginning to the end of treatment and post end of treatment. So we printed all chapters out, and with our friend Marianne laid them out on the floor in the room with a couple of dogs that kept sitting in the middle of them and scattering them, which was not helpful. But or maybe it was. I don't know. They may have done a good job. Yeah. But in moving things around, and we went through a couple printings, personal printings of reading it and trying to figure out if things fit. So we got it to a point where we thought it was a good manuscript.
We cut 50,000 words
out of John's.
So we had written a lot more. It's all mine too, because you know me, I just go on. And so from the original, what we had produced, we ended up cutting about 50,000 words.
How many pages is that?
That's the book's is what, 320, 330, and so that's probably another 150 pages.
Yeah, it's now about 90,000.
About 90 now.
90, somewhere between 90 and 100.
And so that process was actually quite difficult. Because you write these things, and some of it is really very well written. Our editors and helpers thought that's great, but it doesn't belong in this book.
Mm-hmm.
And so, because once you get going in that environment and with the time, it sort of needed to come out, needed to be written down. And honestly, while I was doing a lot of that, I thought, even if this never makes it in the book, the kids might, somebody will want something about this. And realizing that a lot would be cut out, but I didn't know that much. And so we obviously I had a lot to pour out about things that weren't particularly related to this, but had related to our field. Anyway, so we eventually got it to the right size. We got it in the right order. Yeah. And then the hard part, that was all the easy part, because the rest of it's not in our control.
Yeah. So then you helped us. We tried to find an agent, and I guess at that point we really went straight. No, I guess we were going to agents, right? Yeah, we tried, and to be honest, nobody was that interested in it, and for a variety of reasons. I think some people are like, it's a cancer book, or the co-author thing is hard to market, and anyway, and so that was a little bit of a dent in our self-esteem. But we ended up we have a friend who suggested that we talk to this person, Rohit Bhargava, who is actually local around in Virginia, who's published quite a few of his own books that are sort of business books, but he also does this sort of hybrid self-publishing. So But so he provided a lot of guidance to us. I mean, I think when you just self-publish, you could do it on Amazon, I think for $300, but you're completely on your own on everything. And he had graphic designers that helped us, they designed the cover and helped us put the book together, which was huge. I think it has turned into a much better product, at least for us, because we didn't know anything about any of that. And
I mean, down to paper choice and which font you're going to use and what font size and, the standard size book and some of the color choices and all the things that we did.
And he brought in a couple of other, we had a copy editor, but also a sort of overall editor who was the first really objective person to read through the whole book and give us and comment on it, which actually again helped with the kind of cleaning up process, because he would say, nice, but it's just not that, it's not relevant here. And so I think we both actually out of that got a kind of rhythm, at least I found I did, that I could start then going through and saying, oh yeah, this doesn't need to be in here. So he actually helped, I think, a lot in that cleanup process as well. And then, so, then we published May 4th.
And then, you get a paperback version of it.
Oh, right.
And you read through it, not for content, but for, spelling and, everything else. So honestly, it's still that we haven't really read the book in a long time, but we've, been in it a lot, but we haven't really read it. And then once you approve that, you decide how many you want to print and where they're going to sit, and you pick a date. The pandemic has sort of changed many things. And, normally you kind of line up, if you're really good at this, you line up, tours and in-person stuff and the like. And so none of that's been going on. But we have been getting to reach out to our medical community. We're, pretty well connected in the medical community, and people are interested in hearing the story, which we're delighted to hear. And we've been pretty good at the cancer support, advocacy, survivorship community as well. And, if it ever gets to the next level of just a book you see at the airport to buy, that would, that'll be cool. But I think our main target audience are the medical and cancer patient support communities.
Yeah, you guys have I think you've done a really great job on just marketing it and getting it out there. Now, granted, I'm in your sphere, right?
You see a lot of it.
You retweet
You're on my
a lot,
Facebook page, yeah.
But I still think you guys have done a good job. I mean, you've had a lot of coverage, you've gotten on media, all those sorts of things. And so can you talk about that process just a little bit? Like how did you do that? Did you just rely on connections to get the book out, or how did you?
It's been a mix of things. I should say, I noticed as I was looking at the festival that Beth Ann Patrick is one of the speakers, and she actually picked us as one of the 10 books to read in May for the Post, which was a huge thing for us. So she's listening. Thank you. It was really a mix of connections. I mean, again, you've been a huge help. We've had lots of friends in the cancer community. We did hire a PR firm who helped us get some of the coverage that we have gotten in the WGN interview we did a couple weeks ago in Chicago. And
early on though, even this, you were helping in this as well, is that you need blurbs, right? So you need quotes and things like that. So you pick who you think might be helpful in telling your story, and people who are respected in this space and who people know. So if you do pick it up and look at the back and say, who's read this? They might say, oh, and there you go. It turned out to be a really nice list. And this is in many ways a lifetime of getting to know people and meet people. And so there were a few that turned us down, but not many. Most people said, sure, let me get it. And they read it and produced nice blurbs for us. So that, of course, taught us a little bit about, I guess, that self-promotion in some ways of, will you read our book and will you, help support it, and be willing to put your name behind it. So that taught us a bunch. And then I think we've been lucky enough to have some of those connections over time, but also, other folks like you and others who liked the book and think, it's a good thing to get out there, and have helped to support that and spread the word. And, this format, you don't have to go to every Porter's bookstore, around, so
Porter's
you can.
doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah, I know. See, I would not even be able to find one. And
I'm here to keep him straight.
Go to the Amazon stores, John.
yeah, exactly.
Right.
Go to the Amazon grocery. That's where it'll be. So now you can reach out to people around the country and even around the world. So we've had some sales in Australia and New Zealand, some European sales, and just because you know people and you're talking to them nowadays.
Yeah. I have two last questions. So I want to ask about the cover. I always ask about the cover so everybody can see it. So I don't know, John, if you want to answer it, Liza, if you want to answer why the pink ribbon, and especially to authors, like, how did this kind of come about?
Yeah. Well,
it's growing on me, by the way.
Well, so yes, it was, it really was a point of contention. There was, not contention, but I think neither one of us wanted this to be viewed as a breast cancer book. I always have to, I want people to understand, I'm not like this huge breast cancer person. I've always been a huge GI cancer person because that's what John is. And as I say in the book, I've met a lot of his patients, and I'm, both on purpose and frequently, we're in a restaurant and somebody comes up and says hello to him, and I can see how adored he is and all of that. So and respected. And respected generally, I guess. But anyway,
go back to adored.
Yeah, adored. So I agree, I really agree with him about this. Breast cancer has taken up so much of the oxygen in the room around cancer research funding and advocacy, and that it's, it does feel unfair to all the other cancers or people who are suffering from those cancers. And so when they came back to us with this design, and it was, I will say, the ribbon was a little more intact on the first go around. It was still a little frayed, but it was, and we both kind of said, actually, that makes sense. That it's, it is, there, some of it I would say is probably just the blatant, marketing piece of a pink ribbon is probably, breast cancer books do well. But the fact that it's tattered really says a lot about what happens to, I think, all cancer patients. You end up coming out of it no matter what you do. I think you come out feeling a little tattered through the rest of your life. There are both, as I said, both physical and emotional scars. And then I think for John, being both a cancer caregiver and being an oncologist has done to him, at least more emotionally perhaps than physically. And then I think there's also a little bit of a statement about the breast cancer movement itself. And, it started out in a very, I think with all the best intentions, but like all things, things grow and people get, a little excited. They lose their focus on why they were doing this originally. And it becomes an industry and more than a cause. Yeah. And so I think let's get those are my 3 points about
it's great. It's the clearest I've ever heard that done. Thank you. But first off, when the cover wears out and it's sitting on a shelf, it's a blue book.
Yeah.
So
we did not get paid for the cover.
Let's be clear, not the right blue, but it's kind of a blue.
Yeah.
This will be an internal joke, but hopefully not brown eventually either.
Yeah,
right.
That's the next version.
Right, it's a color changing version.
But
by the way. Yeah, go ahead, John.
The first line of the book is breast cancer did not always irritate me. So, it's the whole first chapter is a rant about the breast cancer machine. And I think actually an oncologist just got one a couple of days ago, and he said he was 11 pages into it and he was hooked. And he
wasn't a breast oncologist.
He wasn't a breast oncologist.
Although we have a breast oncologist endorser, and
right.
I think they have,
and breast patients have endorsed it. So we in the end, after that initial, we don't want a breast cancer book. If as you get into it, if you recognize that it says all the things Liza just says, and it's meant for all patients, all doctors, all caregivers.
Last question. Do each of you have a favorite part?
Well, as my daughter says, favorites are polarizing, so we don't pick favorites in our house. But I think the chapter, and again, I sort of, I give Mary Ann credit for this because I think she elicited a lot of stuff from me that I might not have done otherwise. She's really advanced my writing. immensely is a chapter about sort of contemplating death, and the Christmas we had right after I was diagnosed, in which we went to this lovely restaurant in Washington with the kids, and my parents had left town, not on purpose, but because they didn't know I was going to get diagnosed with breast cancer, and they'd already made plans. But I think they're just, you know, it was a day of so many really strong emotions. I mean, I think, you know, can tear me up now, but you know, I mean, it was a very joyful day, but it was a day in which we had this friend who had not made it a year after her breast cancer diagnosis, and had asked John if this was going to be her last Christmas with her kids, and I had to contemplate that. I mean, I had no idea where this was going to go. So let's see, that's mine.
Thanks for sharing.
Mine is, I think, the chapter called I Never Go to Funerals. And that's basically based around the concept that I get invited to a lot of funerals. And I've gone to some, and as I say in the book, the short of it is I feel like a total failure. But at the same time, I actually get too close to the patient with that funeral, because now I learn so much more about their lives as people get up there and recount all the good they did in their lives, and that life was in my hands just, you know, days before. And so it's just too close, and it takes too much out of me to go. And then with that, sort of the reflection on my own mother's funeral, and the memories I have of that and that experience, and the contrast of all of those people who came to my mother's funeral, looking, as I say, at the back of my head, as I was sitting in the front row of this big church in Kentucky, none of them wanted to be there either, but they were there, right? And so the appreciation and feeling them supporting me, even though they did not want to be there. So this sort of chicken side of me that I don't want to go there because it's too hard myself, but so valuing the people who were there for me. And then all along, at least at the time, almost being certain that we were going to have one of those events for this woman sitting next to me, and that I was again going to be sitting in the front pew with too many people behind us looking at us. And I'm so grateful that didn't happen. But it's a reflection on that line that we in our field have to walk between being personal and there for people and falling in love with them, if you know what I mean. But then being objective and keeping your own sanity. And it sort of, to me, is captured in that one chapter.
Well, I, for one, am glad that Liza's still here, because I don't know, John, if I could put up with you without
without the governor. You know?
Yeah, right.
We'd meet at Borders Books and have coffee. It'd be great.
All right, you guys. I really appreciate it. I want to thank Sean Murphy and Pamela Sorensen for helping organize this. I want to say thank you to 1455 Summer Festival. Hope you guys enjoyed this. And please take a look at Off Our Chests.
Michael, thank you very much.
Michael.